Alright, looks like we are live. This is going to be a retry for some of last night's technical issues. Taking some more measures such as wearing these bypass headphones to listen to everything in real time, make sure my noise gate's not cutting out. All is good on my end. Alright, do we have anyone tuned in with us yet? Alright, looks like first viewers in. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the stream. Currently just on windy.com right now looking at the satellite and radar overlay. Showers have been reported in Whatcom, Skagit counties, as well as San Juan County, Island County, Tulalip, Jefferson, and the eastern parts of Kings, Snohomish, Pierce, Skagit, and Whatcom counties. Alright, Julie, hello. How's the audio sounding for you? Just as a preventative measure, I'm wearing these pass-through headphones to monitor audio, just to make sure there's no issues on my end. Everything sounds good on my end. How does it sound on your end so far? Sounds very good. All right, perfect. Exactly what I wanted to hear. Thank you so much for your feedback. So that being said, I guess we'll just tag right along then, won't we? We go back in time here a bit to show the progression as this front begins to make landfall very shortly. There were some areas of low and mid-level clouds coming in, even some high-level clouds offshore. This was at 9:11 p.m. last night. And then some more scattered higher clouds coming in as we crossed the 2 o'clock hour this morning. Yeah, it would be a great time to get your patio umbrellas taken care of. 100%. While it's still relatively dry out. And see, we even had some showers passing through here around 7:30 or so this morning. At least this is what the windy satellite is showing. And then as the sun came up, you could really see the satellite in much clearer detail. These little popcorn showers here, these are the prefrontal showers coming in, and then even some more areas of convection coming ashore. So this area here from the southwest interior up to the Tacoma area is going to be a close one to watch as we go through the day tomorrow once this front passes through, because it's starting to catch the attention of some other National Weather Service meteorologists, bringing up the chance of funnel clouds and perhaps a landspout / tornado, a very brief one. Conditions are there. They're not great, but it is important to communicate the lows and highs of each event so that there's no surprises whatsoever. And I'll go into more detail on that here in just a second as well. Okay, I'm out to 35 hours on the new NAM 3K. I'm the 18Z one. So we are still within a good enough range. We're not all the way through this event, but we are through 10 p.m. tomorrow, and it does show the extent of the wind gusts in this area. Alright, just a quick little run through. Here's what the NAM 3KM is showing so far. This is the 18Z that's almost hot off the press. Showing wind gusts starting to kick up into the 30s here in the North Sound. Parts of Island, Skagit, Whatcom, and San Juan counties. Wind gusts hitting a 30 or so mile per hour range at around 4 p.m. today. Then notice the frontal boundary right here. This is oriented from southwest to northeast, moving in from the west towards the east. You can see the wind gusts are already in the 40 to 45 mile per hour range here in the Hoquiam area. Really, anywhere in the red and dark purple is the 40 to 50 mile per hour range. And you notice as well, we kick up into the 30 to 35 mile per hour range as we go later on into the afternoon, into the evening time after the sun sets. These winds are most likely going to be coming from the southwest. Let me just verify wind direction real quick. So it looks like starting out due south ahead of the front and then shifting to more out of a southwesterly direction the farther south you are after the frontal boundary passes. And then well behind the front as we go into tomorrow afternoon, see sustained winds out of the west, the farther west you are, turning to southwest, and then relatively out of the southwest as you go farther north as well. Sorry, just got a notification there. But then you really see this westerly surge starts to pick up tomorrow afternoon. He starts well off the coast here, and then it moves in between Vancouver Island and the Olympic Peninsula. And then that westerly gradient really starts to pick up, and it's got its eyes set on the western part of Whidbey Island, as well as parts of Camano Island, the southern portion of San Juan County, and extreme western Skagit County, including Anacortes, Burlington, and Mount Vernon. We're currently looking at sustained winds at the moment, and the strongest sustained winds appear to be 29 or so knots. So that conversion is 1 mile per hour, 1.15 miles per hour per knot. So you multiply this value by 1.15 to convert it to miles per hour. So this would be about 33 miles per hour sustained winds. And then as we switch it over to gusts, in the same area, right around 45 mile per hour wind gusts coming down the Strait of Juan de Fuca at 5 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. This would appear to be the peak time to watch the southwest interior and parts of the South Sound for some isolated rotating cells. The signals aren't great for thunderstorm activity, but there is a small signal that shows that some of these thunderstorms could have a little bit of rotation, and there is a small funnel cloud chance as well. They've even started mentioning land spouts, which is mainly a ground-based rotation that's disconnected from a thunderstorm and is associated mostly with non-supercellular structures, which are the strongest kinds of thunderstorms. Those are the ones that produce the most dangerous tornadoes out in the plains. Extremely rare here on the west side. It's sort of similar to a dust devil in some ways, but land spouts can on occasions cause some damage. Let me actually see if I can pull up a graphic real quick to show you guys better just how different a land spout and a tornado are. I pulled up a good graphic one time, and just make sure I can do the same now. Not sure how well you guys can see it on stream. It may be compressing it a little bit. But this was posted by the National Weather Service in Indianapolis back in September of last year. And it says a tornado forms from a thunderstorm with a rotating updraft. So one that spins, rotating updraft, most often from a supercell thunderstorm, which of course is the strongest kind of thunderstorm. Landspout is a non-supercell tornado with a narrow rope-like funnel that forms while a thunderstorm is still growing. See, it kind of looks like a hybrid between a tornado and a dust devil as shown here. These dust devils are common over on the east side along the Columbia Plateau. But it just simply says the difference here is there is no rotating updraft. The spin originates near the ground. Rather than in the supercell thunderstorm, the spin originates usually in the cloud and then extends its way down to the surface. It pulls in a rotating inflow jet into the storm and allows the funnel to begin to condense. Combine that, of course, with what's called a rear flank downdraft, and that's what helps to shape a tornado into the way you see it. Combination of RFD and low-level inflow jet help to develop tornadoes. Meanwhile, of course, the Landspout does not have this feature. And you can usually see because it's not always connected to the cloud base. You see there's a little funnel right here. But it looks more like a dust devil than it does a tornado because it doesn't have that defined condensation funnel reaching all the way to the ground. So just thought I'd show you guys that real quick as well. Just thought it was pretty interesting. There's also a little bit of, I guess if you want to say, controversy with this. During our last storm event where we had that little pop-up microburst down in Longview, and we also had what looked like a Landspout tornado down in La Center, Washington, which is in Clark County. There was a well-defined circulation and funnel cloud that crossed Interstate 5 right around La Center, and there was a little bit of debate on whether or not it was a Landspout or what could have been a brief tornado. But the National Weather Service in Portland, which covers that area, did put Landspout possible tags on their special weather statements. And some people considered them to be slang from the National Weather Service, but it's an official National Weather Service term that they use. So it doesn't appear to be the case there. I'm going to switch the NAM3CAM model, which is now out to 40 hours on here. Goes all the way out to 60, but it's still well within range of this event. We're kind of keeping an eye on the structure of these post-frontal showers. So by this time, the front's already made a beeline all the way into Idaho and Montana. But then it's the post-frontal instability axis here that really becomes interesting. This will be something to closely watch in the morning time tomorrow as well as the afternoon. It does show some rather discrete cells here, albeit not nearly as strong as you would see in the Great Plains or in eastern Washington, where there's no inhibiting factor over here, aka the Pacific Ocean, the Puget Sound, all the mountains and whatnot. But you do occasionally get some favorable wind shear down here along the I-5 corridor south of Olympia. It looks like that could very well be the case again tomorrow. Going to run this in comparison with the HER3CAM. The 18Z in particular, this one goes out to 48 hours. Very similar story here. Although the HER3CAM, which on occasions does sort of overdo events like this, does show sort of a sloppier storm mode, but it does on occasion show these little discrete line segments coming through the area. So this would be really fascinating to see if this verifies. During the last event, the HER3CAM didn't do so good. The NAM3CAM definitely did better in that aspect. So, who knows, maybe the HER has a change of heart this time around. But it does show a really interesting early morning into afternoon time tomorrow as the front passes over. So look at lightning flash potential, and it definitely shows thunderstorm activity very much possible, even showing some today as well. Although I do not think that we're going to yield much, if any, thunderstorm activity ahead of the front. The best environment for this is definitely behind the front, when we start getting these little pop-up cells over the mountains and off the coast. You have to watch some of these off the coast for waterspout potential as well. You see, this is pretty early in the morning here on the HER 3KM. This is at 6 a.m. tomorrow. And showing a really almost defined line segment across most of western Washington. But it does show the best chance for lightning potential later on in the morning and early in the afternoon across parts of western Washington. And then notice as we go on into the morning time on Monday, all of that vanishes. Okay, I'm going to try making a couple changes to my gate here. For those of you who don't know, I do use a noise gate on my audio. So that's the reason why you hear it kick on all of a sudden when I start talking and then kick off when I stop. Like that. So I feel like it may be a little bit too aggressive. So I'm going to play around with my numbers a little bit, see if I can mess with the compressor. Maybe have it start to fade out, sort of like that, rather than have it cut off. This is what it would sound like with no release time whatsoever. It just cuts off like that. I'm not a fan of that. Probably try something like this. Therefore, you have sort of a fade in and a fade out. It's not so abrupt. Much better. Yeah, so this would be hourly lightning flash potential. This is effective at 1 a.m. tomorrow. And you notice how it highlights a good part from Thurston all the way into Chelan County. For a good chance of seeing some lightning flashes, perhaps. It's not way up there, but it's still enough where we could see maybe one lightning strike out of this in the early morning time. See if we can pull up any helicity tracks. These are tracks that show rotating thunderstorms. And it doesn't look like we have that, which is a good sign if you don't want any strong thunderstorms. Otherwise, if it did, it would show a little contour here that shows where the updraft within the storm would be rotating. Which it does not show that. See if the signal's any different on the NAM 3KM. Don't really notice a difference on the audio. There's no cutting out today. Well, that's good to hear. I restarted everything on my computer, made sure, saw if it was the software. I went through my stream again after it finished rendering on a different device, and I didn't hear it cut out at all. So weird to see that 2 people did have it. It would be a little bit less of a concern if only 1 person reported it, but the fact that 2 people reported it definitely set off a red flag. And so I looked into it, and I'm monitoring all of my audio through my headphones today, instead of just, sort of eyeballing it and not listening to it in real time, or else there'd be feedback through the microphone if I had my speakers going. Listening to it in the headphones today, and everything sounds crystal clear. So good to hear all the problems are resolved. And yeah, the change in audio is negligible between what I just did before and after changing the gate settings. It's just something that you have to notice as an audiophile. Someone who is really into listening to audio and different frequencies and timbres, sound structure. Watched another stream on YouTube last night, and it was happening to some of us. Oh, well, I guess that answers that. It had nothing to do with me. It was all on YouTube. Yeah, that definitely helps the prognosis of things. So thank you very much, Julie, for returning back to me on that. Yeah, so I have a hunch based on the NAM's previous history. This is the NAM 3KM model again, that it's probably going to beat out the HUR again in the accuracy of this post-frontal event. Just, of course, based on previous history. You know, it could go completely 180. Trying to figure out if this is like Mount Rainier messing with the radar simulation, or if that's actually a pretty strong thunderstorm just outside of Mount Rainier National Park there at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Tomorrow for sure is going to be a radar watching day right off the bat. It may be a good day to go live early in the morning tomorrow. Like, early in the morning. I'm talking like 5 or 6 a.m. Judging by what I'm seeing on the model runs, because it has the main cold front, as seen here, moving through really late tonight, going into the midnight hours tomorrow. And then almost immediately we have these post-frontal showers popping up in this area of instability. And as this cold front passes as well, for anyone traveling over the passes, no pun intended, the snow level will crash as this cold front moves through, right behind it. Because right now we're in an area ahead of the cold front and south of the warm front called the warm sector. Which means, yeah, the air is relatively warm and moist right now. And so that means high snow levels, usually like only where the highest peaks. So the volcanoes, for example, will see the snow, and the passes would get rain or a rain-snow mix. Once the cold front moves through, those snow levels are going to drop into the 3,000 to 4,000 foot range. So football starts at 6:30 a.m. tomorrow. Yeah, that's right, because the game in Linden, I believe. I think it's Jaguars and Rams, if I'm not mistaken. It's a good thing you brought that up, because I completely forgot about football Sunday tomorrow. Thankfully, the Seahawks aren't playing till Monday night. I wish they played a little, like, during the normal time slot on Monday, like around 5 to 5:30. But rumor has it they're playing at 7 p.m. Is that right? Let me check on that real quick, because I think this was from an official source. Yeah, that's correct. So tomorrow at 7 p.m. or Monday, excuse me, at 7 p.m. the Texans and Seahawks play. So it's a good thing the Seahawks aren't playing tomorrow, because if they were playing at home tomorrow, they'd probably be in for a wild ride. See, because this would be the 1 p.m. time slot, and scattered showers and possible thunderstorms in the vicinity. Let's see, can I go out to Monday at 7? It's right at the end of the model run, and it does look like it dries out in time for the game. Yeah, because once the instability moves east, then things really start to dry out as we go into Monday afternoon. And I guess I just thought I should probably schedule an event on Facebook, since my Facebook Live should be starting at around 5 p.m. I attempted to look into the simulcast setup again, but then I realized I totally forgot that with the simulcast setup I could use to stream to Facebook and YouTube at the same time, only allows you to stream to a Facebook profile and not a page without a premium subscription. So I realized immediately that's going to be a problem. And also the fact that Facebook now deletes your live streams after the first month is a little bit of a concern to me. So I'm going to keep like 90 to 95% of these weather discussions specifically to YouTube, but also share it to Facebook. You know what I mean? But it won't be streaming to Facebook. I'm really going to save the Facebook Lives for the 1,000 follower increments. So, like, I'd be going live again once I hit 26K, which is coming up pretty quick, as a matter of fact. With all the recent talk of the weather this weekend, my follower count has shot up several hundred just in the last 48 hours or so. Currently at 25,377 and still climbing. So I'm going to set up the event right now on Facebook. Just realized I probably don't have much viewership because I don't think the actual event even posted to Facebook. I've just been sitting here looking at the models and didn't realize that the Facebook ad popped up and wanted me to actually schedule the event since I mentioned the time on the post. So it automatically went to the event and didn't post to the page. That's probably why we're starting out pretty slow. It's just the YouTube audience right now. But thank you everyone who has tuned in so far. Looks like there's 4 of you. 12 views total, 5 likes. Okay, up to 5 now. I believe once I get that published to Facebook, we should see a decent increase in audience, assuming that people are willing to tune in right now. You know, and of course, and now that that embarrassment of a Husky game is over. And there's no playoff baseball today. Okay, that should do it. Just found out how to get notified. Are you talking about notified on YouTube? Because if you're on YouTube, it should have the ability to ring the bell next to my name, and then it gives you the option of what to get notified for. Okay, so the event is scheduled. 25K live stream and weather talk here on YouTube. So today at 5 p.m. This is going to be on Facebook Live. And I do believe also, I don't know if you have to have a Facebook account to tune into a live. I know you do if you want to comment and like and share, but I'm not sure about viewing. I think the views might be public. But I'm not 100% sure on that. Ooh, that's a big link. That wasn't supposed to happen. That's better. So Comment says, in the meantime, I am live on YouTube at the moment to address any concerns with the upcoming weather for the non-Facebook followers. Everyone is more than welcome to stop by and say hello. All right, there we go. Was using my son's account, but now I can comment, like, and share as well as get notified. I'm just retired and the internet for entertainment is new to me and education on things that interest me. Alright, well, thank you for tuning along with Puget Sound Stormwatch as a subject of interest. You know, it means a lot. Thank you. And for anyone just tuning in, like, I didn't realize till just now that I made all of those comments while Facebook was on the main screen. Good thing there wasn't anything confidential. But probably not a good practice for future streams. One thing I do want to bring up, though, this is an area of interest as well. So this is an automated sort of algorithm on Twitter/X. If you guys follow the NATOcast account on Twitter or X, you'll see this image popped up. It was posted at 8:26. And it actually shows a 2% area for a tornado risk for parts of the southwest interior and extended all the way up into Everett. And then a 1% around that, and then a 0.1% even farther than that. So this is something that really caught my eye, and it caught the eye of a lot of other people as well. Because we all know what happened the last time we had a 2% or greater tornado risk around Western Washington, parts of Western Oregon. You know, it was a complete bust. So, of course, the skepticism is reasonable. Also because it only looks like it's using the HREF ensemble models, so it's not using any of the other high-res imagery. It's just really doing this based off of one model algorithm. So the chances of this happening are low, but not impossible. Alright, I guess we'll go back to what I was doing here on Pivotal Weather. For anyone who missed it, you're probably used to me using WeatherBell maps, WeatherBell Premium. Well, my subscription expired and I had updated my card at the end of last year after this subscription, and so it just cut it off, and so I went back in to renew my subscription several times, and it just kept declining it instantly. But it would go through the bank, and then the bank would instantly go through and refund the transaction each time, no matter if it was an annual or monthly subscription. It just did not want anything to do with WeatherBell Premium. So as disappointing as that was for me, it did give me the opportunity to try out the trial of Pivotal Weather Plus, and then hopefully in 6 days this should go into effect for the annual subscription, and I should have access to this for a full year, barring any other stupidity from the bank. So on the other hand, while we're on this page, this is the NAM3KM. So I want to go make sure I'm not in updraft helicity. I want to make sure I'm on composite reflectivity. We don't have any other gadgets and gizmos popping up here, just the radar, simulated radar. This should be at 11 p.m. tonight, and then put it into comparison with what the most recent HER3KM is saying. This, the 18Z, and then the 19Z is fully rendered. This is the 18-hour forecast here. Once again, some more interesting signs showing up here on the new 19Z HER3KM model. still has a very well-defined frontal boundary here. A very sharp cutoff from almost southwest to almost northeast. It's a little bit like a little bit farther to the left on the angular axis. You know, I'm trying to figure out how to word this, but it's a little bit difficult for some reason. But what I'm trying to say is this isn't exactly a 45-degree cutoff. This is more of like a 35-degree angle or so. So it's more so of a south-southwest to north-northeast kind of axis here. But nonetheless, same story with what the previous HER models and the most recent NAM3KM were saying. And then you notice as it moves into eastern Washington and starts to dissipate over here, here come all the post-frontal showers and storms. Now, I think the HER3KM is still a little bit bullish on the storm coverage and intensity. But I will be watching this for sure in real time. I'll have to get up very early in the morning and probably start streaming like at around 6 a.m. depending on how everything looks. You know, and I'm no stranger to getting up at 4 a.m. That's what I did for several years when I worked at Safeway full time. Although my sleep schedule has been bouncing around based on the timing of all the weather. So it's pretty inconsistent. And you know that's why I like to do this full time, just because if I need to jump in and cover things, like really no matter where I'm at, I always have my phone with me. And I have pretty much all the resources I need on my phone to track everything in real time. You know, radar, satellite, surface observations, and so on. I have pretty much everything I need wherever I'm at. And if I were to be doing something else full time, I wouldn't be able to do that spontaneously, depending on what time of the day I'd be working. But unfortunately, the way things are going, that may be the case again very soon. Just because, you know, times are extremely tight here at the office. And although it pains me to ask for donations, it's very much needed right now with the way things are going. The good news is, though, that we are one step closer to YouTube monetization. If I go on my little viewer down here, we're currently at 494 subscribers. And going through and reading a lot of the Facebook comments, been getting a lot of Facebook messages as well. And it's unfortunate to see the amount of negative feedback that a lot of the things I'm posting are getting. But, you know, sometimes you just gotta say it is what it is and move on. I actually got a message this morning from someone that said, you know, if you keep having these subscription-only posts on your Facebook every now and then, that you're gonna lose a lot of followers. And, you know, I just had to bite my tongue super hard on that. It's always important to maintain a level of professional composure. And I think I've done a pretty good job of that so far. I'm trying to diffuse situations. So I just explained to the inquiring person that, you know, I have over 25,000 and growing followers that do support me in this cause. They come to Puget Sound Stormwatch as one of their sources of weather information. And that I have a crew of 60 plus 60 plus Facebook page subscribers that do pay 99 cents per month for access to, you know, extended forecast, fantasy forecasts, other. Wow, sorry, my ring is going absolutely ballistic here. Okay, now that that's out of the way. So I just explained to the person that, and you know, hopefully maybe Facebook does make an improvement to how the subscriber page works. Because it does show, if you go through the main Puget Sound Stormwatch page on Facebook, it does occasionally show each time I make a subscriber only post. And it says, for example, I posted a subscriber only reel and it shows a lock icon over it. Well, I guess there's a few people out there that think that that is a huge inconvenience and are willing to jump ship because of that, which, you know, I do understand, and it's fine. But I just had to explain why I did it and what the purpose was behind it, you know? And that was that. Moved on. Now, going to check a few things out on Facebook. Tried to reply to pretty much every question that I've gotten, whether it's a message or a comment. Just dozens of them pouring in. And I do also expect, if you do come from Facebook, I do also have the rapid fire updates channel on the front page. So over in the intro section, as soon as you go onto the Puget Sound Stormwatch Facebook page, let me go ahead and pull this up real quick. So this is what you see when you jump on to Puget Sound Stormwatch on YouTube. You should see all of the stuff in the intro here, and then the rapid fire updates channel right down here. If you go into that and join, there are 528 people at the moment, but I do post these rapid refresh updates, especially during thunderstorm events, like as I get them, usually every 10 to 15 minutes, or unless something breaking pops up and I have to break in the coverage. Like, for example, this was last Sunday when we had that convergence zone and the associated thunderstorms. I just posted pretty much every time there was a new lightning strike or every time rotation popped up on the radar. And so that can be seen here. So if you want any rapid fire updates, you know, feel free to at least consider previewing this channel here. I don't know if you have to join first to see it. I don't think you do, because it says it's seen by 451. I believe you can just preview it. But it sends the rapid fire update straight to your inbox, and it does cover all of Western Washington, so it's not region specific. And due to that sort of little tidbit, a lot of people ended up leaving after the first set of rapid fire updates just because of how much spam there was going into their inbox for an area that was getting weather while their area wasn't. So really the only way to combat this would be to create an update channel for each little like sector of Western Washington, which seems like a lot, and that's just something that I'm most likely not going to do. Okie doke. Let's go back and see what the 18Z imagery says again. But this radar image is extremely fascinating, because it does still show some of these little pop-up showers down here, which is basically Washington's Tornado Alley. You know, down here in southern Cowlitz and most of Clark County, along the Columbia here, between the Columbia and the Lewis River. Because this is where we had that supposed wet microburst with 80 to 90 mile per hour wind gusts. You know, I think that was on Sunday as well. While we had the convergence zone up here, we did have those robust rotating showers and thunderstorms down here as well, including either a funnel cloud or land spout report down here in the center. Yeah, this area is extremely prone to those little quick spin up brief tornadoes. This is also the area along the Columbia here between Oregon and Washington where that April 3rd, 1972 F3 tornado formed and crossed. The deadliest tornado in Washington state history. So he's showing a pretty considerable line segment down here along the Oregon side of the Columbia at 2 p.m. tomorrow. And at this time, it looks like after the front passes, you may notice how the direction of the cells change. You know, it starts out mainly from out of the southwest, shifts to westerly, and then out of the northwest. That's a very interesting feature too. It could be some sort of surge out of the Strait of Georgia, perhaps a northwesterly surge, meeting maybe with some of the westerly winds coming out of the strait, forming a little convergence here. Will be interesting to see if that verifies as well on radar. But I guess in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and pull a point sounding from down here. This is at 8 a.m. tomorrow for the Toledo area. Luckily, it doesn't show any hazard, doesn't show much instability here. It does show quite a bit of low-level wind shear, though. Notice this little turn with the angle here on the hodograph. But nonetheless, any surface-based activity is pretty tame. Very shallow lapse rates. Strong moisture profile, though. We have a pretty deep moisture layer, but really low cloud tops and relatively high base storms if they were to form. Maybe if we go farther on into the morning, this will change. Maybe we'll see those higher topped rotating thunderstorms, perhaps. It actually looks to me like the wind shear is decreasing as we go on, and the cloud tops are staying relatively low. This is at least according to the HRRR 3KM model. Yeah, so we're all the way out to hour 26. This would be 1 p.m. So at least on the HRRR 3KM for the point soundings, it's not showing very much activity. And see, the wind shear becomes much more linear here. So, which is not supportive for any of those quick little spin-up storms. We do, however, start to get really steepening low-level lapse rates, which is the change in temperature with height. You usually want these to be over 7 degrees Celsius per kilometer for any sort of favorable storm setup, but we do still have these really low-topped cells in thunderstorms down here in the southwest, and the bases are going up, which is not good as well. Let's put that in comparison to the NAM 3KM, see what it has to say for around the same time. So immediately we get the marginal severe hazard type. Pretty interesting because, see, we have, if you don't count the mixed layer parcel down here, the surface level and most unstable level potential energy in the atmosphere is definitely favorable for a couple of pop-up thunderstorms, but very low topped. It looks like relatively medium to high base as well. Not much wind shear, so not really indicative of any of those rotating storms. We do have 139 joules per kilogram of 0 to 3 kilometer CAPE, which is definitely supportive for thunderstorm activity. Downdraft CAPE is 344 joules per kilogram, and the surface to 3 kilometer above ground level lapse rate is almost 8 degrees Celsius per kilometer. So the farther the difference is between the white dash line here and the solid red line here, this is instability. This is energy that those thunderstorms, if they do initiate, could take advantage of in this environment. Would like to see a little more curvature in the 0 to 1 kilometer hodograph. It's relatively linear between the 0 and 1 points here, but You know, it's still overall a favorable setup from what I can see, at least on what the NAM 3KM is showing. So let me switch back to that real quick. Let's take a scan of the Tacoma area around 1 p.m. tomorrow, see what it has to say here. Because actually, I was pulling some point soundings up in the foothills of King and Snohomish County yesterday, and it was even showing some marginal tornado hazard type as well, which was really fascinating to see. So around 1 p.m. conditions do not look very good for thunderstorms in that area. But see, as we jump to 2 p.m., that marginal severe pops up again, and we get a little bit of low-level wind shear. So you notice how the linear shape changed to more of a bent line segment here. This is some fairly modest low-level wind shear below a kilometer. Still relatively low topped, but a little bit higher top than what the HER 3KM was showing here. And see, definitely some modest low-level instability as well. And a pretty good steep moisture curve as well. The closer the green and red lines are together, the more moist the parcel of air is. And you want a greater distance between the yellow LFC and the purple EL line here. So this definitely shows more instability. A little over 400 joules per kilogram for both the surface, base, and most unstable parcels of CAPE, which is the measure of instability in the atmosphere. Substantially less 0 to 3 kilometer CAPE though, and much less downdraft CAPE, but still favorable low-level lapse rates as well. Mid-level lapse rates are okay. They definitely could be better, but see the 700 to 500 millibar, so between these two lines here, the slope of this red line between those two bars there is certainly favorable for some thunderstorm and maybe some small hail activity as well. Because steeper lapse rates are usually indicative of larger hail. But, you know, not in this case, it's not. You notice how we go into the next hour and that possible hazard type disappears. So this is 23Z, so this would be 4 p.m. This is for the Tacoma area, for anyone just tuning in, just looking at some point soundings for the area. Certainly favorable for some weak thunderstorms, maybe a little bit of rotation here. See, the angle is pretty close to 90 degrees here between the 0 to 1 kilometer levels, but we're still kind of dealing with this mid-level capping inversion here where the red line exceeds the white dash line, which is going to result in some relatively low top storms if they do get going. I guess let's go earlier into the morning because it is showing some interesting signals here as the sun starts to rise. Certainly favorable wind shear, but extremely low topped. See, only 3 kilometers high. That's not good. And caps that exceed the level of instability here. You do not want this number to be greater than the CAPE here, the SIN H. And really poor lapse rates, extremely shallow lapse rates, less than 6 degrees Celsius per kilometer in the mid-levels. Just an indication that the air mass is going to be stable down there for quite some time. Doesn't really get much better as you go throughout the morning. It's not until really the afternoon time when conditions get favorable. So you really clear as day mid-level cap right there. And this was one of the setups that resulted in a bust for the severe potential back in March of this year. Because we really didn't take into account this little nudge here at the mid-levels where the red line eclipsed the white line. So it resulted in these relatively low top storms due to a stable layer of air down near the surface. And due to that stable, cooler air near the surface, it wasn't able to punch through this mid-level cap inversion, which resulted in one of the most infamous forecast busts in Pacific Northwest history. Let me just put in the METAR here for SeaTac Airport, see what that one has to say around the same time. This is 18Z. Okay, valid at 17Z, so 10 a.m. on Sunday. Certainly some angular wind shear, but the magnitude is certainly pretty strong, but need a little more angle to look favorable for rotating thunderstorms in the area. Weak rotation, sure, but nothing to go completely off about. It shows the same thing here, mid-level cap inversion. What's up with the extended forecast next weekend? Stormy weather for certain. So happy it's finally my favorite season. So you bring up an excellent point, and I've been meaning to bring this up, but I've just been paying attention in the short term. So I got to pull up some of the deterministics and the ensembles to really show you what's going on. So go to the northwest sector, and we'll pull up precipitation type and rate. So this, let me make sure, okay, I'm on the new 12Z GFS. This hasn't shown much of a clear signal for the time period I'm looking at, but watch how many fronts move through over the next 16-day period. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7th one coming in here. and this is all the way out to the morning of November 3rd. I notice also it automatically switches over to standard time here too. So therefore, these models will go from -7 Zulu time for Pacific to -8 Zulu time for Pacific. But it's even showing possibly another really weak storm moving into the area all the way out in the November 3rd and 4th range. But the one we want to focus on for sure is this range here between the 25th and the 27th. Now, the most recent GFS pulls this storm much farther to the north, but does bring the elongated cold front through. We can check the evolution if we go back in time through these model runs. Which, one thing I do like about Pivotal Weather over WeatherBell for my maps is you can go much farther back in time than WeatherBell, which only goes back, I believe, 4 runs at most. Like 4 to 8, depending on the model of choice. This goes back to 12. So still not showing very much on the 6Z. We go back to the 0Z, and it has a much weaker 992 millibar surface low, making landfall somewhere in northern Tillamook, southern Clatsop counties, and then moving up into the mountains. This wouldn't give us any strong winds whatsoever. It would bring the strongest of winds mainly on the southern quadrant of this low here, so where these tight isobars are right here. As that moves inland, you'll probably be somewhere in the Portland to Eugene area. We see the strongest winds in this setup. But we have to go farther back in time to see some of the crazier projections from this GFS model. And unfortunately, we were having some agreement. However, see, like right here, we go back to the 12Z yesterday, and it just shows something absolutely absurd for Oregon and points south. This would spare Western Washington, at least north of Olympia, from devastating winds, like 60 plus miles per hour. Even something like this would be 70 plus off the coast, maybe even 80 mile per hour wind gusts in some areas. But we did have some consistency, and then I looked this morning and we lost it all. And now we're back to square one. This model run here, the 6Z yesterday, which is 6 model runs back on the GFS, did pull a relatively deep cyclone into the Cape Flattery area and central Vancouver Island, which would result in some relatively strong wind gusts, especially in the Seattle area, but not anything too crazy because it is starting to fill in as it moves in. Notice it goes from 989 millibars to 998 millibars as it pulls in. So this low is really starting to fill in and weaken as it moves in, which would spare us any strong winds. But there were some even crazier solutions here as well. Like this one would be pretty insane for Lewis County southward. But yeah, you can see as I go farther back in time just how many discrepancies show up. And there's almost no agreement whatsoever from model to model. It shows 4 fronts moving through in a matter of 3 days in this model run, but we're all the way out 48 hours ago looking at this. And you notice how the storm intensity, track, and timing changes each time. It's completely normal the farther back you go. This would be a big one. This is almost exactly like the Hanukkah Eve windstorm setup. This would be October 27th at 5 p.m. But do note that we are 11 model runs back in time on the GFS, which doesn't really have a great reputation of this. So take this with a grain of salt. And for anyone just tuning in, we're just going through some previous deterministic model runs to see what's going on a week in the future. A 977 millibar low making landfall, somewhere between, I'd say Cape Flattery and, or let's say Cape Shoalwater and James Island. So somewhere right around here. And taking the track that it does, if we go back and look at the gusts, you notice it brings at least 50 to 55 mile per hour gusts to a huge swath of the Puget Sound, and 60 plus here in southwest Washington and immediately off the coast of Long Beach. Thankfully, this would be filling in pretty quick. If it were to make landfall at full intensity like that, and we'd definitely be talking another Hanukkah Eve event, but that's extremely unlikely to happen, so take it with a grain of salt. And some of these model runs don't even show the low pressure making it even close. Just the associated cold fronts. Be really nice to have some more consistency right now, but people can dream. Let's compare that to the European, because the European has been a little more interesting recently compared to the GFS. Excuse me. Not in this most recent run, though. This most recent run is not showing it to the best extent. It shows the low pressure center much weaker and pulling it all the way down into Northern California rather than up here. There's still quite a bit of spread in timing, strength, and track of this potential wind maker next weekend. But after this event clears out, by say Monday or so, I'll start making regular posts on the public page and the public Patreon page as well about the discrepancies in the model solutions for this upcoming system here. If we go back and look at every other model run, because every other model run on the European goes out to 360 hours, but the 6 and 18Zs only go out to 144. So you can't really use those as an accurate measurement for what's way out in the distance. And also, just wait till I show you guys what the Canadian model shows, because it's gonna blow your socks off the last 2 runs that I've seen. So yeah, 0Z European doesn't show much of anything. We go to yesterday's 12Z. Really interesting signal here. Same track with what that last model on the GFS showed, but a little bit deeper in pressure. And it takes a little while to fill in that pressure gradient as well. See how tight the isobars are directly over the South Sound? Go back and convert that to wind gusts. And for a short time, we're still seeing wind gusts over 50 miles per hour for much of the South Sound, Southwest Interior, and some parts even close to 60 in this area. And then the 0Z before that bounces the storm a little bit farther to the south and pulls it in as a 987 millibar low down here in the Coos Bay area. Would definitely be a strong blow to southern Oregon. You know, the Brookings area would probably see some pretty strong wind gusts for this. Yeah, see, it shows 55 to 60 miles per hour just off the coast of Brookings with this setup. Now look at the 12Z from 2 days ago. Put this into comparison. See, it pulls the system way in farther south, but then brings in a new system, really strong hurricane force system that goes into northern Vancouver Island and brings a really strong cold front with it that could usher in some strong wind gusts. This is way out at the October 28th range. You notice for some areas 45 mile per hour plus gusts in this setup, with a huge swath of wind gusts over 100 miles per hour in this low pressure center across a broad area. Some areas of central Vancouver Island, if this were to verify, 90 plus mile per hour wind gusts. However, once again, a little disclaimer, highly, highly unlikely. Love the stormy weather, but not when it gets too crazy. Seems like a fun fantasy forecast right now. I'm excited to hear more in the coming days. Yes, I'm excited as well. It is prime model watching time around the Pacific Northwest. This would definitely bring some strong wind gusts to the Washington coast and most of northwest Washington here if a 987 millibar low were to make a close approach. A little bit too far north and west of a track to bring strong winds to the Puget Sound. It would still be decently strong, mainly within the cold front. The strongest winds would be within the center of low pressure here. See, even showing some really strong, like almost 60 mile per hour signals here too, but that would be within the front, not the area of low pressure. See how it doesn't cast a super tight pressure gradient over our area. Tightest pressure gradient is here on the southwest side as it moves into Vancouver Island. So overall, what I'm seeing with these forecasts is still a widespread kind of range, but it does have it sort of narrowed down from Haida Gwaii up here down to Northern California. So it's still a pretty broad range, but at least it's not like throwing it up into Alaska or throwing it all the way down the Southern California coast. You know, so it's progress, but it's not great progress. Really strong frontal cutoff here. But we're all the way back out 3 days. Looking at the 0Z 3 days ago. And see, due to that really strong cold front there, this would usher in 60 plus, even this would be 66 miles per hour for the downtown Seattle area if this one were to verify. But meanwhile, right now, if we look at the current forecast wind gusts on the European model, it doesn't really show too much, but it does show a strong cold front signature here the morning of October 24th, which could briefly bring in some strong wind gusts. But here between October 25th and 27th, which is the region of interest, like the time period of interest, it doesn't show much for the Puget Sound area. It mainly pulls it down south into southern Oregon and northern California. Hey, this would be the strongest wind field down here. And then showing the European AI forecast system. This one also had some pretty interesting signals on it as well. Like there was one yesterday, I believe, that just showed something like a completely insane solution. The most recent 12Z doesn't have anything happening for our area. It does bring that front through sometime between the 29th and the 30th, but nothing major from it. Yes, beautiful it is. That is right, Julie. Good thing about the AI forecast system is each of the 6-hour runs all go out to 360 and not just every other. See, what this one showed, the 6Z, the 11 p.m. run last night showed a much weaker system. That actually, it deepens a little bit as it moves in, but it doesn't take that really favorable storm track for damaging winds across the Puget Sound. But it does hold pretty steady. It just doesn't show the greatest storm track. Yeah, it got a little more interesting here on the 0Z, last night's 5 p.m. run of the AI forecast system. They had a 978 millibar system moving from southwest to northeast, which would keep the strongest wind which would keep the strongest wind field down here in Oregon. Then here's one of the crazier ones it was showing. This is the 18Z yesterday. So this was the 11 a.m. model run of the AI forecast system yesterday, showing a 966 millibar surface low, filling in a bit to 979, but still a 979 millibar surface low right there with this pressure gradient over the Puget Sound would definitely result in strong wind gusts 50 to 60 miles per hour pretty easily. Not quite on par with what it showed during Hanukkah Eve and Inauguration Day storms, but still definitely up there as a competitor if this were to verify. Look at that. That wind field is insane. These are sustained winds, by the way. And same thing, almost the exact same thing between the 18Z and the 12Z. See, although deeper on this one, and this one, this would be like next level damaging for our area. Easily some areas of 70 mile per hour wind gusts across parts of the Puget Sound. A 963 millibar low taking the ideal, like nearly Goldilocks zone track of this storm here would bring a huge blow of winds to the Puget Sound. Like these are just sustained winds, not counting wind gusts. Unfortunately, the AI forecast system does not have a way to see wind gusts, at least yet. It may be a feature that is soon in the works, however. Just not currently at this time. But this should be a devastating scenario this early in the year with leaves still on the trees. Like, it would just be a nasty, nasty southerly wind event. But once again, extremely unlikely to verify. It's something super similar in the previous run before that, and even in the run before that. So for a while, we did have some favorable agreement there for a stretch yesterday for the AI forecast system. But still, nowhere near enough agreement from the models yet to really sound that alarm. We're still pretty far from that. But now I need to show you guys the GEM model, the Canadian deterministic. This one runs twice a day, every 12 hours. And this one was just insane. Like this one and the one before were just showing some absolutely insane numbers for this area. Just wait till I go to the wind gust map and look at this. So this is the 0Z. And it's showing the yellows are 60s. Mile per hour wind gusts. The 69 miles per hour in the Salish Sea. And even 67 miles per hour along the Nisqually. 87 just off the coast. And this wouldn't be for a short time either. You notice this is 6 hours between runs and it's still showing 60 plus between these two. That's a 6-hour difference. Now, it would be less insane if it was a few hours, but this is 6 hours of 60 plus mile per hour wind gusts for some areas, if this one were to verify. And the 12Z, the one that just ran this morning, is even stronger. You notice the difference there? Now, this entirety of the Central Puget Sound would be seeing 60 plus mile per hour wind gusts with this. See, 63 for the Tacoma area, 64, actually inland, 66 miles per hour, the Seattle area, 67 Everett, 64, 65 for Skagit County, 61 here in Bellingham, 72 over Island County. That's miles per hour. Now off the coast, 84 miles per hour, just a few nautical miles off the coast of Long Beach. Absolute nightmare fuel if this one were to verify. But so far, the Canadian model is the only one today to show the solution here. And for anyone watching right now, there's really no one watching at the moment. I think there's 2 of you in at the moment. But, I mean, this would just be like textbook windstorm scenario. This would definitely put it up there with Hanukkah Eve, for sure. But, before I get too far ahead of myself, I just got to say that there's maybe a 5% chance of this happening, as the model shows here. We still have to get within several days of the event and watch out for any sort of model agreement to really see what happens there. So do take it with a grain of salt. Really good fantasy fuel for sure, though. How reliable or accurate have Canadian models been throughout the years? It seems rather intense. Well, that's a great question. I wish I could answer it efficiently. However, I don't pay too much attention to the Canadian models. I mainly focus more on the comparison between the European and the American models. However, sometimes I will use the Canadian models as a comparison. However, I haven't seen the Canadian model like nail an event, nail it right on the head for any of the more recent events. So, I'm not sure if that changes your view on the Canadian model, but like I just haven't seen it, nail a forecast for this area. I mainly just use it for fantasy purposes. But if we do start to see these models all start to line up again, then they'll definitely start raising some red flags for the immediate future. And these would be wind gusts for 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on the 25th, which is a week from today. But yeah, really intense signal, and not to mention it's been showing it on 2 consecutive signals for the same time period. But you notice how if we pull back this same overall time period, several model runs back into the future, it doesn't show anything remotely like that. Only the last 2 over the last 24 hours. But if it starts showing this signal again in the next like 1 to 2 runs, then we may have a case for something for the Canadian model. Let's see if we go to the GFS for the same time period. Basically nothing. And then the European. Little breezy, but brings the strongest wind field farther to the south. So yeah, at this point, it's just fantasy fuel, you know, to be taken with a grain of salt. And I go into much more detail on these model comparisons on my Facebook sub page as well as my Patreon page. So if you guys would like to do me a huge favor and help support the channel and keep it at full-time status for more streams like this, then I'd highly consider looking into Patreon. I do have my page right here. Let me see if I can pull up the main front page real quick. So yeah, it doesn't look the same for this to you guys. This is just sort of a preview to you guys on the live stream right now. It'll probably show it as locked because I do post a lot of posts on here behind the intro forecaster tier, which is $1.99 per month if you want to directly go back and support Puget Sound Stormwatch. I'd like to give a huge shout out as well to Lisa Seckler for being the first and only to pledge to the Puget Sound Stormwatch Patreon. We also have another member as a guest as well, so he gets access to all of the public blog posts. So like this is one of the locked posts right here. This is public. This is one of the locked ones as seen down here. So you guys watching right now all get an exclusive preview to this. Like this is what I would be typing for the notification of payment received. Oh wow. Julie Olson, thank you very much for your $25 donation. Do appreciate it. I will definitely be giving you a shout out in the live stream tonight as well. Yeah, honestly, without all the support, yeah, I would not be able to do this full time. I'd probably still be working my full-time job at Safeway, which, you know, times are tight. Not going to complain about it. It was a calculated risk that I wanted to take. One, to save up enough to see if I could do this full-time for a few months. And it's been a few months. You know, I'm right where I want to be, albeit, you know, a little bit over optimistic on the earnings of the aspect. But yeah, this is what the main Patreon page looks like, and it's usually every other one, depending on how many posts I make a day to the public page that get cross-posted over here. Usually every other post is an intro forecaster tier post. Yeah, like this one had 2 consecutive ones. And this was a public one, this was a locked one, locked, public, locked, and so on. So I make usually 2 to 3 posts a day on Patreon at the same time as I do Facebook. In case you guys don't see a video briefing on YouTube, and I truly just need someone to, you know, hold me accountable for that. It's something I really should have had done from the moment I jumped on full time, but you know, time started getting tough outside the page, and I'm not gonna make any excuses. You know, it should have still been done. You know, things started happening in other states involving family and so on, and you know, had to take a few flights out of state. That definitely helped the situation, as in helped exacerbate the financial struggles of said situation. But anyways, the overall point is I want to give a huge shout out to all of the page subscribers, anyone who donates on Patreon or donates a coffee. Like I believe that was on the coffee side, right? Yes, it was. Hasn't shown up here yet on the feed, but the coffee amount just went up by 5. So huge shout out to Julie Olson in the comments for buying 5 coffees. Thank you so much for your generous donation. Just looking at a few other things on Facebook right now. Also looking through Blue Sky and Twitter. Puget Sound Stormwatch is on Blue Sky. It's at psswanthony.bluesky.social. Also on X2 at Milton WA Tech 99. That is Milton WA Tech 99. Make frequent tweets on there. I also like to live tweet baseball and football games, specifically the Mariners and Seahawks, if you guys like a more personal behind the scenes aspect. I'm all across social media. Alright, let's go back and get a current radar image. So looking at things currently, this is the front right now. And it even pulls what looks like a weak stream of atmospheric, like an atmospheric river from halfway across the Pacific up through where the cold front axis is moving in right now. So these atmospheric rivers always occur on the front side of cold fronts. You know, so the cold front's back here, and then the stream of moisture extends all the way out here. And see all that lightning right now? That's from the severe storm event going on here in the Midwest. But, you know, for sure, it's a brief plume of moisture, so we're not expecting too much flooding around the area. The Weather Prediction Center at one point did put a 5% marginal risk of flash flooding for the entirety of Western Washington. And let me see if we have an updated product as well. Yeah, these are all essential services that will remain updated during the government shutdown. So this is the Weather Prediction Center site. Let me just make sure I'm looking at the right contour here, because this is one of my first times. Okay, there we go. That's what we're going on. So this is the area outlook for today. This is the legend here. It shows your current surface observations and the overall synoptic setup here. So this is the area of low pressure up here currently, and then in the occluded front, all the way out to central Vancouver Island, a warm front out ahead of it, and then the cold front extending all the way out into the Pacific. And this line here is a dry line. This is the border between dry air and moist air. And so it shows a large contour of rain and thunderstorm potential today. You know, the blue is mixed precipitation, white would be snow. And then it changes quite a bit as we go on into the day tomorrow. Still shows that rain and thunderstorm area around Western Washington with a risk of mixed precipitation here in the higher elevations. And for Monday as well, it starts to pull the rain contour out over the coast and north interior, and it leaves us out of it, but you still have that mixed precipitation risk over the higher elevations. Current time is 2:41 p.m. We're about 2 hours out from the Facebook Live stream. For those of you who recently tuned in and don't know, I'm going live on Facebook Live at 5 p.m. That is going to be to celebrate 25,000 followers. And with the way things are going right now, we may have the 26K celebration coming sooner than later as well. Because we're currently at 25,382 followers, so 618 away at the moment. Just looking at some surface weather maps here. This is 7 a.m. Eastern. This is Eastern Standard Time. So the area of low pressure up here, area of low pressure here, several dry lines, cold front, warm front. This is a stationary front, the combination of cold and warm fronts here. Yeah, see up here, will remain updated during the shutdown. So let's pull up some of the risk areas, because originally it did show parts of our area in this marginal risk. It does not look like that's the case anymore. At least from what I'm seeing on the WPC site. So they've either dropped it, or what was for today has since expired. I do believe it was the former. I think they dropped the marginal risk for excessive rainfall around this area. That is assuming recent model downtrends have been taken into account. We're starting to get a new render of the GFS. The 18Z is starting to render. It's only out to 21 hours right now. See what it says for wind gusts around the area. Yeah, not that impressive right now. Although when it comes to wind gusts, predicting wind gusts, I wouldn't be using the GFS for this. I lean more towards the European and using some of the CAMs here, the convective allowing models. So for example, this is what the most recent, if we go to the 20Z, the most recent HER3KM run shows for wind gusts around the area. Let's zoom in a little bit here. Gonna zoom into the state level. I do for sure wish it allowed me to zoom in further than this, but unfortunately it doesn't. And you know, the setup here is much different than WeatherBell. WeatherBell actually showed you all of the airport sites. This does not. It just shows some major cities in the area, which, you know, I don't 100% agree with this format. And some people have expressed confusion on Facebook as well. But I've just had to sort of clear the air that, you know, there's nothing I can do about it. This is just how the site API is. UI. So if this HER3KM model were to verify, it would start showing 30-mile... Something fell. It would start showing 30-plus mile per hour wind gusts up here in the north interior as soon as 5 p.m. tonight. And getting relatively strong. I'm assuming these winds are coming in from the south ahead of the cold front. So it shows wind gusts in the 40 to 45 mile per hour range up here in the north interior. Even areas close to 50 miles per hour up in the Bellingham area and extreme western Whatcom County as we go through the late hours tonight. And then cooling down a little bit before this westerly surge really starts to pick up. And this is where the model cuts off. We have to go back to the 18Z to really see this in a clearer detail. You really see this westerly surge come in through the Strait of Juan de Fuca, and it is setting its eyes directly on Whidbey Island and Camano Island as well. The Camano Island areas of 45 miles per hour, almost 50 miles per hour here in the mainland of Whidbey Island. You know, from Deception Pass all the way down to, I believe this would be the Langley Freeland area. This would be at 3 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, and it shows it for quite a number of hours. See, 40 plus for several hours after that until things really start to cool down as we go into Monday morning and say winds die down to a calm. But of course, this is just one model run and one model in particular. So we really have to compare it to other models and go back in time with previous model runs as follow the trends. And that's when you can start to make a more reliable and credible forecast. So see here, the NAM 3KM is much more conservative on wind gusts around the area. It does show areas of 40 plus down here Tacoma southward with possible areas close to 50 miles per hour in the river valleys and areas around Mount Rainier National Park northwestward. However, this wouldn't bring any strong damaging winds to the SeaTac area. This would keep any stronger winds mainly over the valleys or coastal waters. And luckily for a short amount of time too. But things do get breezy throughout the day Sunday. And I believe this is attributed to the area of low pressure moving in from the northwest towards the southeast, and we get a little bit of a gradient and pressure casted on us behind the front. That could be what it is, but I'm not 100% on that. Let's see, it does show a real brief period of wind gusts exceeding 45 miles per hour. So models do agree overall on the timing and intensity up here. Could see some stronger winds really start to kick up here in the North Sound, Whidbey Island area, San Juan Island area. Overall, just the entirety of the Salish Sea out here for a few hours this afternoon as the sun begins to set. And then the frontal boundary comes through overnight. And by the morning time, the breeze kicks up again. Some relatively moderate wind gusts around the area, and then that chance for isolated thunderstorms behind that as well. Hey guys, I'm going to take a real quick stretch break, get some water. Be back in a couple of minutes. Hang tight. All right, so judging on stream activity, as well as the fact that I'm probably going to have a fairly long stream in a couple hours, going to start to wrap things up here shortly. So if you guys enjoyed the stream coverage, feel free to share Puget Sound Stormwatch to your friends. Hoping if all goes well, we'll hit 500 subs on YouTube by tonight. If not, then after this event's over. We're at 494, so I just need 6 more subs on YouTube. One model I don't check out too often too is the HRDPS. It's the 2.5 kilometer Canadian model here. And so the Canadians showing a very similar story as well, although much less intense the farther south you go. So I think the Canadian may be onto something here. Because I do feel like, you know, some of the forecasters out there have said that the models have uptrended. I think they've sort of downtrended over time. I think what the Canadian's showing here is fairly realistic for the area. You know, maybe some 40-mile-per-hour gusts here and there, but mainly keeping the strongest activity up here up north. Huh, that's strange. I just looked and it said I actually lost the like. As in, like, someone retracted their like. That's too bad, but it is what it is, and I respect your opinion. But anyways, I think we're going to wrap things up for this stream. It's almost 3 o'clock. Got to get ready for the 5 p.m. stream today on Facebook. If you guys want to tag along, feel free. Got to answer a lot of Facebook questions as well, so I might as well take the time to do that. But once again, huge shout out Julie Olson for buying 5 coffees today. Thank you for that. It helps tremendously. And thank you to everyone else who has continued to donate and help support Puget Sound Stormwatch. You guys are the greatest fan base out there. It's not even close. Just checked and it wasn't me. Really? As it says I received $25 from Julie Olson Peterson. That's not you? Yeah, it shows now. It says Julie gave support. That be the coincidence of all coincidences or what? Yeah, that's weird if it wasn't you. But I mean, you know. Oh, wasn't me who unliked. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. That definitely startled me for a second. But yes, Julie, thank you for your generous donation. Definitely give you a shout out on the Facebook stream tonight. But in the meantime, looks like the audience has begun to leave right on time. So, bought the coffee but didn't retract a line. Okay. All right. So, that being said, I'm going to open up now to any last minute questions, comments, or concerns. And we're going to get things wrapped up here by 3 p.m. Earlier if we don't have any additional comments. I would like to thank everyone who tuned in on short notice again today. It's good to hear that any of the technical problems anyone had have been resolved. Seems like it was on the YouTube side of things and not mine, which is much more reassuring. But yeah, I definitely have to get going to reply to a lot of Facebook comments. Because tonight and tomorrow are going to be extremely busy around here weather-wise. The next weekend could also be another thriller in the Pacific Northwest weather world. Yeah, so I just checked outside my window a few minutes ago, and definitely raining outside. Good to see the rain return once again. Areas of moderate showers and some heavier showers crossing over the strait as well. Let me see what this looks like on radar scope. because I do have that open right now and I haven't showed that yet. This is what it looks like. This is the Camano Island radar site. Shows moderate showers around the South Sound as well as the Strait and Vancouver Island areas. If we look at the Langley Hill coastal site, it does show these heavier showers making an approach for the northern Washington coast. So, on the menu for today, expecting the winds to start to kick up ahead of this front this afternoon, especially north of Everett. I do believe that this is the frontal boundary showing up here on the radar. But yeah, rainy and windy conditions the next 2 days, possible thunderstorms. Wouldn't be surprised to hear a report of a funnel cloud, maybe even a brief tornado touchdown if conditions persist as shown. So do be advised on that. If what the models are showing is true, probably be looking at an earlier morning live stream tomorrow. Also depends on how late the live stream goes tonight as well. You know, with the Husky game being done, no playoff baseball, no football today. Expecting a pretty good attendance. And the fact I also put out an event on Facebook as well. So if you guys like to tune along, you guys know where to find Puget Sound Stormwatch on Facebook. I'm going to go ahead and end the stream on YouTube for today. Once again, thank you all for tuning in, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, and so on. Wouldn't be able to do any of this without you guys. So have a great afternoon, everyone. May see some of you at around 5 o'clock on Facebook. And stay weather aware. You know? Always stay weather aware. So take care, everyone.